week's Roundtable with Joey's Legacy. I'm Carrie Hyde, your host, and with me tonight I have Scott Fine. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Carrie. How are you?
Great, great. And to the left of me, actually in my living room or dining room, I don't know what this is considered anymore, is Dr. Tara Haddad. Hi, Dr. Haddad. Hello. It's so weird when you're next to me. I'm like, wait, should I look at the camera? Should I look at Dr. Haddad? I don't know what we're supposed to do. So I want to welcome you all to come in tonight. Oh, and I think we have our attorney coming in as we speak. Hi, Christina.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing?
How are you?
Hey, Christina, how you doing?
Christina, you're muted. Oh, she's got it. She's got it.
There we go. Thanks.
So we have Dr. Haddad. We have our attorney with us. So we want to welcome. You've made it just in time. Perfect. So Christina Buxton, how are you?
I'm okay, thanks. How are you?
Good. We're really good. So, so for those of you who have not listened to our roundtables before, I'm going to do a quick little, I always ask the same questions to our attorneys and to our veterinarians. Most of you know Scott Fine is the founder of the organization, and Joey's Legacy unfortunately was started because he lost his dog Joey, who is a beautiful little dachshund, to veterinary malpractice. And so this is how this whole organization got started. And Scott has been wonderful to bring on so many fabulous veterinarians and attorneys. And each week he makes sure that we are all on here discussing some of the things that we're going to do. So as I said, Dr. Haddad is next to me. So my first question always goes to the veterinarians. You know what it is. Have you ever seen veterinary malpractice?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's such a hard thing to just go, yes, I've seen it, because we want to give all the background, right? But it's hard.
And I think you did ask me that. And we went to kind of the definition of malpractice, because you know, as a veterinarian, you see a lot of things and they're on a spectrum, and I think we did talk about that.
Yeah, and we're going to get, I think it's really important, and it's why Scott has been so fabulous at bringing in both veterinarians and attorneys, because it would be really hard to run this organization without those two things. Right. We need the legal, but an attorney is not really going to necessarily understand what is standard practice for a veterinarian. Right. So this is why it's been so fabulous as he's brought it. So Christina, you're on mute. So unmute yourself. We're going to ask you to, if you could define for us what veterinary malpractice is and negligence, so we can kind of, sometimes people get those mixed up and they don't quite understand what they are. Can you help us out here a little bit with that?
Sure. Yeah. One time I know I answered this question and you guys were really happy with the definition. So hopefully I can give this one. I know I should have written it down. Sorry, I've got a tail. So negligence is the ordinary, it's the standard of care that every person owes to every other person. So I owe you all a duty to not hit you with my car. But if I do hit you with my car, that's negligence. As a veterinarian is held to the standard of care as other veterinarians with that same, sometimes it's geographical depending on the same resources and like things that are available to that. Like a veterinarian in Nebraska isn't necessarily held to the same standard of care that a veterinarian in downtown New York City would be, because you can have like different access to resources in those different locations, but you're held to this standard of care that's reasonable for your
situation, environment. Right?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm coming off of a really bad cold too.
Oh, so no, we're glad you're here. No, but exactly, that makes sense, right? Like if you can't have access to something, how are you going to be able to treat?
Right. Yes. And then also education wise, you have general vets, and then you have people who are specialists, whether it be surgery, oncology, internal medicine, that are held to a higher standard of care for their specialties.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, the basics is like, I can't take my cat into a veterinarian and the veterinarian say, the veterinarian think that the cat has cancer and then not tell me that the cat has cancer because they don't have the equipment to really delve in to find out for sure whether or not the cat has cancer. That would still be veterinary malpractice, because I have the ability as a veterinarian in, let's say, the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, to be like, your cat is showing certain symptoms of things, but I don't have the equipment or the people or speciality to really dive into it in depth. I would still have to tell you what I think and give you the opportunity to follow up with someone else or do something else. But so, I mean, that would still count as malpractice. But if I don't have the equipment, then I'm not at fault for not going deeper into it if I literally can't do that. I only bring that distinction up because sometimes that comes up for me.
Communicate it, yeah.
Yeah.
I really see that happening. I'm not saying it has happened, but I've seen cases a little bit like where they don't have access to an x-ray machine. So they say, oh, well, we can't do an x-ray, so we'll just wrap the leg and see what happens. To me, that would be veterinary malpractice. You could find a vet who has an x-ray machine. You can't just say, I don't have it. So, because I think some vets would be afraid to lose the client. So they may say, well, we'll just try some anti-inflammatory when they probably should be doing an x-ray.
Yeah, I mean, I've had cases where the veterinarian doesn't know for sure what the problem is. So they're like, well, I think it might be this, rather than running extra tests or sending them somewhere where they could get the extra test done because that particular veterinarian doesn't have the capabilities for it for whatever reason. And so they're like, well, we'll try this less aggressive approach. And sometimes that does make sense depending on what it is. But sometimes there's certain situations like the example you're giving. I mean, I've never seen that one specifically, but it's usually it's usually cancer. Where they say, well, we'll try like an antibiotic or I can't think of the word right now, NSAID. Or we'll
Basically an anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, we'll try something like that and see what happens. But then in the meantime, whatever the invisible illness is still progressing because that's not actually what's going to help cure it. It might suppress the symptoms for a little while, but eventually, yeah. So, I mean, to your point, yes, like you can.
And as far as fault goes, because when you ask me, have you ever seen malpractice? And I think there's like you said, there's negligence, and then there's this, like if you had intentionally done something or really blatantly left out something that really harmed the animal versus just didn't progress to finding out what the problem was. But I think when we've talked before, I've also talked about communication. And, if I talk to an owner and I say, look, chances are, you got probably about a 70% chance this is a situation that antibiotics would clear up. But if it's not that, then it's this other thing, and I can't here. So I'm going to tell you, in order to do that, you need, and if the owner says, well, I'm not going to go there, I want to try the antibiotics. But, as long as there's a communication and everybody understands what the possible outcomes are, then I think that's when you get into just that little gray area if something does go wrong, right?
Yeah. It's hard though, because a lot of times clients only hear what they want to hear. And so they didn't hear you say you should go get these tests somewhere else. And they only heard that you could try this and it would magically work. And that's not really what a veterinarian said. So, and that's where it gets into that. That's where Scott and I just had a conversation this morning. It gets into this gray area of like, how much fault is it of the veterinarians versus the owner and what they want the veterinarian to do or not do. And then it can get kind of tricky. So we have to communicate, which is what Dr. Haddad is saying. And it's not just the communication from the veterinarian, but it's the communication from the owner to ask questions, understand, get second opinions, and all of the things that we talk about. It's difficult. It's really, really difficult. I think that most veterinarian malpractice is not on purpose. Like veterinarians aren't out there going,
yeah, right. Yeah.
what can I do? it starts from bad mistakes that just get worse and worse and worse and worse. And then what Scott and we've talked about on the show before is the cover-up is by far the worst thing we can get is the cover-up.
And that's
Scott?
when you say to me, have you ever seen malpractice? That's like one of the first things that comes to my mind. It's not really that, oops, we accidentally gave your dog a little too much medication. It's more that, okay, I'm changing my medical records, or, crossing out something, or, or redoing them. That's pretty blatant and pretty intentional.
And you start seeing that the veterinarian, I keep looking down at my phone because Lori sends me questions. So for those of you who are listening, please send your questions in. We have some people tech support in the back. They send me the questions. So if you have any questions and you feel like your pet has gone through any kind of a veterinary malpractice or any kind of, it doesn't necessarily, I know we focus a lot on veterinary malpractice, but Scott, you've gotten cases from boarding facilities, all sorts of places, correct?
Right, and those are basically fall under the category of negligence. Sometimes intentional, yes, sometimes not. But those are more cases of negligence, and in those cases, I typically, we normally start with the vet review of the records, and then if the first vet finds malpractice or negligence for that matter, they offer to write the letter for the member, and then the member brings the letter to the attorney in the state where the allegations are made. We typically, for a negligence case where perhaps the vet tech picks the animal up, animal gets out of the vet tech's hands, falls on the floor, injures a skull, brain damage, runs out into traffic or whatever. Those cases I normally just send to the attorney because there's no real hands-on by the veterinarian that could have caused malpractice or, caused the permanent injury or death. It's a negligence case.
Right.
So I just send it to the attorney. When it involves the veterinarian hands-on, something happened, then obviously we need an independent vet to determine that, yes, malpractice occurred here. They'll write the letter goes to the attorney, and then the attorney offers the legal options in that particular state. So yeah, we get from groomers, from boarders, breeders, any person that causes permanent injury or death to a companion animal is under our purview.
And the other thing that Joey's legacy, aside from going after the veterinary boards, right? That's what we said. We really need the veterinary boards to hold the vets accountable.
Not going to happen. You have to expose. Not going to happen. I've been doing this over 4 years. I have yet to hear someone come to me and say, hey, that vet board in whatever state did such a great job. They really came down on that vet for severing blood vessels and causing the death of the animal. That has not happened to me. I've not heard anyone in the group come to me with that kind of a story. The thing we try to do is just expose the corruption that flows through all 50 state vet boards, because they all cover up for the negligent vet. They have no interest in disciplining firmly and fairly. And ironically, if they did, Joey's legacy would probably be half as big and half as popular and half as everything as it is right now, because we wouldn't have the need. We wouldn't have as much need.
Right.
It's like the little kid that brings home the report card with all F's and mommy says, don't do it again. How, what does he care? He'll go out and do it again. He didn't get punished. But if mommy really punished him and made him aware that if he does it again, he's going to be in big trouble, he's going to think twice about bringing home a report card with all F's. He's going to try a little harder. Same thing applies in the veterinary profession. 80% of the people who come to our group say, hey, I have never had a bad experience with a vet. After all these years, I heard about you guys. I want to join the group. I want to see what it's all about. I want to see what I can learn from those who have had bad experiences. And maybe I can be a better advocate for my own animals. And then, so which clearly demonstrates what we basically all know, the veterinary profession, by and large, has wonderful members. They entered the profession for the right reasons, the profound love for animals. They provide care and compassion and practice at or above the standard of care. We deal with the others, and unfortunately, most of the others, if not all, fall into the category of bad actors, which is where the lying and the deception comes in.
Yeah.
Where they
Yeah.
try to cover up their own negligence.
Yeah, that's what we were saying. The cover up is just it's like a double blow, right? Because you
Yeah.
lost your animal, and
Right.
now you feel like you're crazy because what you're telling me doesn't make sense. Because instinctually, I know this doesn't make sense. Like there was a case, Scott, I remember you telling me about the bulldog who went in and got spayed, and they said they opened it up and there was cancer everywhere, and then later records proved that they severed some arteries and the pet died from bleeding out. They were able to prove it through the necropsy, right?
Exactly. The pet parent took the dog to an independent vet. The original vet said, "Oh, we opened him up and there's full of cancer, so we just closed him back up and he died on the table." She didn't believe it because she was taking care of her animal. She did a great job of caring for her dog. She took the dog to an independent vet who did a necropsy and said to the pet parent, "What did they tell you over there?" And, "Oh, he's got loaded with cancer." There's no cancer in this dog. That vet severed these blood vessels. The dog bled out and died. So she came to us. We went ahead and our lawyer sued for not only the reimbursement and the replacement values, sued for all kinds of civil fraud, civil theft, fraudulent misrepresentation. They threw the book at this vet, and ironically, we have a case going right now in Florida that's almost identical in terms of charges being brought. So it's no longer just, "I'll write you a check for I'll reimburse you, and here's a 500 or 1,000 for a new bulldog," or whatever the breed is. Now there's potential serious civil damages that are available and are being charged against the vet. So it's a little tougher now for vets.
Well, that's why we're here, because the more pressure we're putting on,
Right.
we're seeing
Right.
veterinarians and even attorneys are starting to go, okay, we can use this. I hate to call them loopholes, but sometimes they work in our favor and we'll use them if we have to, kind of thing, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if they want to tell us, if they insist that pets are property, we'll come back at them and say, "Okay, we'll right back at you. We're going to sue you for all kinds of property torts, civil damages." Christina can probably, no doubt, elaborate on that. But yeah.
Well, that's what before we get to there, Christina, do you think that the main issue, I know there's so much going on here, but is it mostly because they are considered property that veterinarians do get away with this kind of thing?
I would say so, yeah. Excuse me. Because they know that at the end of the day, like, their damages in this are small by most state laws. It's just replacement value and value of the services. But yeah, like Scott said, that, if they're going to sit there and on their website and say your pets are family, we love your pets, we care about your pets, they're like our children, then we're going to turn around and sue them under fraudulent misrepresentation, Consumer Protection Act violations for fraud, because it's like, don't call my animal family if you're actually at the end of the day going to treat my animal like a table or a chair. So but I would say the law does.
And thought about that.
I hadn't either until
You're
just said
right.
that,
They put it all over their websites, all over their business cards. Your pets are family to us.
Right.
Except if I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
And then they're a toaster.
Right. Yeah. They've got little hearts on the dog's nose. It's like their logos and stuff. And it's just like, okay, well, did you mean that? or 'cause
Right.
it doesn't
Wow,
sound like it.
I'm like, that would be just the greatest case ever if you had that all over their website, all over their everything, and then they're standing up in court going, no, just toaster.
Yeah.
just
Just go get
toaster.
another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know which attorney it was. Maybe Scott, you might be able to remind me. There was one attorney that came on that said, you can't say that they're just property, but then charge me as if they are more than a toaster, because I don't spend thousands of dollars on my toaster to get it repaired.
Might have been Jeremy.
Or tens of
Depending
thousands,
on,
yeah. Yeah, so
Right.
you want to charge me as if this is more than a toaster, but not if you do something wrong, then it's just a toaster. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Christina, have you had any recent case? I know you can't discuss everything, but are you seeing, it's been a while since we've had you on the show. Are you seeing any changes or anything positive that's happened recently?
No, sorry.
It's okay.
I wish I could say yes. No, I mean, I'm getting more negligence cases related to vets, like what Scott was talking about. I've had a few people call me because vet techs are like leaving dogs on heating pads and getting burnt. Like I've had quite a few of those lately, and I'm just kind of floored. Like, how does that happen? But that's like Scott was saying, it's not necessarily veterinary malpractice, it's negligence because it's a vet tech. So, or it's like not even a vet tech, it's just like, I don't know, like some sort of assistant or something. And
I mean,
so you can't call it.
that was done a long time ago. It seems like the
coming
amount of
back.
time that's gone by, like people that there are certain equipment that does have some safeguards with that has gotten a little bit better. But I was kind of under the impression with the feedback that I've had over the past year that the way things have changed because of COVID has made it really difficult, made it really much more difficult for the communications to happen, because a lot of this handoff stuff is done in the parking lot. You have dogs escaping from technicians. They don't want to go in that building, and they sure don't want to go in that building without their owner. And if their owner is sitting in a car and you're taking the dog on a leash or whatever, trying to get it in the building, there's that whole issue. Then you have the dog in the building with the doctor doing their thing, and then maybe they call you, and then you don't know if you've asked the questions you need to ask or if you've had anything answered. It's been a very challenging, whatever it's been, 18 months, and that I think is a time where veterinarians really should have done some changes to make that better, and they didn't. I think my experience with a lot of veterinarians is they actually liked not having to deal with having everybody in the office and the little
COVID definitely has increased the risks of your pets going to the veterinarian.
It seems like that to me.
I don't see how it couldn't.
Right.
I mean, you're not communicating, you're not having the same level of communication. And I have a question though, because I'm not sure if this is what you meant, but how do I say this? I own my own business. So if any of my groomers do something, doesn't that mean that my business is held responsible? So when you said it wasn't veterinary malpractice because the tech did it, isn't the veterinarian still responsible ultimately?
Only if the veterinarian owns the practice. Then if it's like if it's like a vet tech or someone who's not a veterinarian, because typically I find that, and I could be wrong, but this has been my experience. So I don't think I'm wrong. But anyway, whatever.
It's not wrong.
If in that case I sue the practice, the business. So to answer your question, yeah, if one of your employees screws up and burns my dog, I'm going to sue you and the employee and your business. I'm going to sue all y'all. And then the same thing for the
I'm all okay. I know.
same thing for the veterinary practice. Like if the veterinarian didn't do anything, if the veterinarian, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm so sick. If the veterinarian did not even touch the dog, then there's not much I can really do to the veterinarian, but I will sue the overarching business, because veterinarian clinics typically are a business unless it's, just like one veterinarian who owns the clinic.
So the veterinarian's license and all of that wouldn't come into play if she never touched that dog or had anything to do with it.
I can't sue the veterinarian. If that veterinarian owns the practice, then yeah, but I wouldn't be able to sue, because that, to me, the person who has the supervisory role is whoever owns the business. Yeah, maybe that veterinarian could be sued, but it wouldn't be a very strong case, because you can't really necessarily sue the veterinarian for the negligence of another person if that veterinarian didn't commit malpractice herself.
Do we have any questions? Just because I can tell you that I have a personal experience that's it kind of is along these lines. It happened a long, long time ago. And I think because everything was addressed as it happened with the owner, there was no litigation that happened. All right, but I don't know if you want me to share with you, I'll share it. And so this had to do with when I was working as an oncologist, there were 2 of us and we worked different days. And the other oncologist sent his patient in on my day to have chemo. And that particular day, there was a technician working that I did not work with, and I didn't work with her for a really good reason, but she was the technician given to me that day, and I didn't have a choice. So the dog just got sent in for chemo, where I wasn't really supposed to necessarily, he had written down all the instructions and all that. So, but I happened to be the doctor on staff that day. So the dog was given her chemo and it was uneventful. But when that technician was cutting the bandage to pull the catheter, there was actually one of my technicians came in on her day off. She was picking up her check, and the dog, this technician was struggling with the dog. So my technician reached in to help hold the dog still. And I heard my technician call her name and say, no, no, no. And when she cut the bandage, cut the catheter off. Okay. So what that means is the catheter that was the part that was in the vein attached to the hub that's out of the vein, she cut right in between there. So now the catheter that's in the vein is now not accessible. And so what my technician did is, because she was holding the leg still, she grabbed the leg like a tourniquet. And she turned around to me and said, oh my, she cut the catheter. So I said, don't let go of her leg. And I ran into ultrasound and I said, I'm bringing this dog in and we got to look and see if we can see this catheter. And so we put a tourniquet on her leg and we ran her in to see if we could see where the catheter was. And I called out the surgeons and I said, hey, you guys come here, because if we can see this, I need you guys to go in and get it. And anyway, this whole big thing happened. Of course, as it's happening, we can't really say, okay, get the owner on the phone. We have to deal with the emergency. Now, the dog was fine. The dog was not suffering anything, but you don't really want something floating around in there if you can help it. And so we took her into ultrasound. They actually thought they saw it. We sent the surgeons in while she was in surgery. I called the owner. Now I'm dealing with this owner who I don't know, because it's not my patient.
Yeah.
So I'm having to talk to her and tell her what happened. I was very honest with her about what happened. And I said, we're in there trying to get it out. The surgeons couldn't find it. So what happened is I then, the owner was upset. And I said, why don't you just take a few minutes, calm down, but drive down here slowly, come on down. I'm going to have you sit with her while she's waking up, and we'll talk more when you get here. And so it was, we had that luxury of being able to get her in and have her see her dog while she's recovering. And I talked to her and just told her about everything that happened. What I did was I said to her, I know at some point I called the other doctor to tell him what happened, but I said, we talked about everything. We talked about the realities of her dog's disease and her dog's life expectancy anyway. And I don't want this to sound
Uncaring.
yeah, compassionate at all, but I just said, I just want you to understand that the likelihood of your dog living long enough for this to be a chronic problem is very small. So I just want you to, I want that to ease your mind, because, but what we're going to do is we're going to take x-rays every 3 weeks. You know, we're just going to watch her so closely to see if we see any evidence of that little catheter piece causing a problem. The dog actually, I think, ended up living a year, which was pretty miraculous because of her metastatic disease, but she never had a problem as a result of this. Now that owner was really angry. She called my boss and wanted, she didn't say anything about me, but she wanted that technician fired. I wanted that technician fired.
I do too. Did she get fired?
But I don't have that ability. She wasn't my technician.
Right.
And I just know that it never went to litigation, that it was all handled by communicating. We made sure that she understood we were going to work as a team to keep our eyes as close as we could on her dog, and it just never happened to become a problem. But that's kind of the thing that we were talking about, is really all of the problem was with the technician and what she did, and her not paying attention, and she didn't do it maliciously, but she wasn't paying attention. And
I think that, at least in my 12 years in vet hospitals, anything that ever really went, I have seen a couple of cases of malpractice that abuse, actually, I've seen that were purposeful. But most of the time it's exactly what you're saying, not paying attention, too busy. I'm not making excuses. That is what happens. They get overwhelmed. They're too busy. They're not paying attention. Complacency, I think, is the number one, where I've been doing this for years, so I'm going to do this. And then every dog is different. And it does happen a lot with technicians. So in a weird way, I was happy to hear that, because it kind of stinks as a veterinarian that you can set everything up for success, but you still have this technician who has this. There's no way a vet could have stopped that from happening.
Right.
How are you going to know what another human is ultimately going to do?
Right.
It's not like any of the vets saw her do that all the time and let her get away with it. That would be much different. Oh, well, yeah, we knew she always screwed that up.
Yeah, she always does.
She
did some other things that really, but that was somebody that really, because of that, really should have lost her job. In fact, I think what happened with her is, I think she just got transferred out of our department where we do a lot of IV catheters. But
see, that's the problem too, right? Vets just close down their shops and then go open up again down the street.
Well, and when you talk about malpractice, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head, there's probably other things, but like intentional, is if somebody loses their temper with a dog or a cat, or an animal, if they lose their temper, physically hit them too much.
I was going to say that too. That is, you'll see that a lot in boarding facilities and in grooming shops. I think you see a lot more of that. There has been a few. I just told Scott about this morning. I had a veterinarian that I worked for one time, and he got really mad because the dogs were barking.
Imagine that.
It was weird. He was so upset that the dogs were barking. So he went around to all of the kennels that dogs were barking and put tourniquets on their nose so that they would not be able to bark. But the problem was, I was in the back and I could hear it come out the side of their mouth. So it was like this weird barking noise. So I come out, I'm like, what is that sound? And he was furious. And he said, I can't listen to these dogs barking all day. It's driving me crazy. And I just thought, God, as I released it made me think of E.T. when he releases all of the frogs. Because I just went around to the cages, like releasing all of these things. And he's real lucky that those dogs didn't suffocate,
Vomit.
die,
Right.
vomit. I mean, there's so many things, but that to me would have been purposeful malpractice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know if that's a term, but is there a difference between
Borderline criminal.
on purpose malpractice?
I'll be honest with you, I've never seen that I've never had anybody bring up something that insane to me. I mean, I would argue that would probably, if I had that case, I would say it was veterinary malpractice. And then I might say it's this thing called negligence per se, which is where you violate a criminal statute and therefore you're liable for the criminal behavior under a civil standard. So what's the best example I can give is like if your dog bites me in the face and then I have to get surgery, whatever. I can sue the dog owner under negligence per se because that dog violated technically the owner violated a criminal statute. I won't get on my soapbox about dog statutes, but anyway, so yeah, I can sue under negligence per se for violating the criminal statute. And that's what I would sue that vet under, because that's insane. That sounds like animal.
Yeah, it's animal cruelty for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely it's abuse. It was total absolute abuse. There was no reason for it.
And I would venture to guess, that happens more often than what you'd think it would. But I think what happens is when that happens, you have somebody close by that goes, oh, nope, I'm taking these off. And so maybe that person isn't necessarily reported, but there's no evidence. There's nothing that
there was
nothing.
There was no
that
evidence.
happened,
Yeah.
that even though
No.
it could have.
It should have.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the first one to say it should have, but I will say this, my excuse is I was like 18 years old.
No, I mean that at least no animals died.
Yeah, he's lucky
Yes,
that I did
yes.
that. He's
Right.
real lucky.
But
that
that's
I
what
did
I'm
that.
saying is I think that usually when that does happen, you have the support staff around that just goes, nope,
Yeah.
either quietly
Yeah.
or whatever, they fix it
Yeah.
before it does cause a problem that would get to the point where you're contacting a lawyer.
Right. Well, in this particular case, the only reason why at a young age of 18 years old, I would go, I guess, above his head and unleash all of these poor dogs was because he was a relief vet. He wasn't my boss. He was like there for like 2 weeks. And so I didn't even know him or really care much. I just was like, and then I remember calling the veterinarian that I worked for, who happened to be in the Philippines at the time, and he let him go that day. He did let him go that day. He said, you know what, I will find somebody else.
Because
And
if you weren't there,
if I
let me
wasn't
tell
there,
you,
those
that
dogs
been-
would have been, they could have died.
Yes.
I mean, it was just, I don't know how long he would have left them like that. It was pretty horrible, but I think those cases definitely are they're rare, but I also think that there's probably, correct me if I'm wrong, some cases of, I can't stand these dogs barking, I'm just going to give them a little lace
Medicine.
pronazine.
Throw them a little,
Yeah.
little
I think that
meatball,
probably
a little
happens
laced meatball.
quite a bit without telling the owners, a laced meatball.
Yeah. I mean, I've never done that, but
Yeah. So, I mean, I have in my boarding facility, I've had to give dogs stuff but their parents always know about it. I've never been like, who cares? Give them a little CBD, those kind of things. So, but I think that probably happens a lot to quiet dogs down. It can be stressful. I'm not
it
gonna,
can be.
I am not gonna say that, it's no big deal. We should all listen to these dogs barking all day. It can be stressful. And that also, I think, is what leads to abuse, negligence, those kind of things, is the stress level can go up really, really high in an environment where there's a lot of barking dogs, and it can create problems.
And in vet school, they don't obviously teach this. They have other things to teach. Even in vet tech school, I don't think they teach anything about this, but they should teach people, you know what, if you have to walk away, like just walk away, go
Walk away.
like say you've got to go out to your car, sit and listen to music, do whatever you have to do, but it's okay to say, I have to leave.
Yeah.
Because you're so much better off walking away, letting them bark, letting them even, having a complaint come through by the neighbors that they're barking, versus losing your temper and doing something that you may not think at the time you may not have a lot of good rational thought at the
Yeah.
time. And,
I teach my groomers that constantly. I said, listen, if I came back here and you weren't here at your table, there wasn't a dog on it, you know, and your table's empty, and I found out you went for a walk because the dog was stressing you out because he's trying to bite you and he won't stand and all the things that are happening, I would be super proud of you.
yes. Yes.
So, you know, you're right. We
Yes.
don't teach that. We don't teach that to the technicians. We don't teach to our veterinarians that it is okay. You're going to work in a stressful environment, and you want to work under those veterinarians that understand that. So there's so many things that go on that a lot of people, bless you, you poor
I see.
thing. What a trooper though. She's like, no, I'm doing this. And I probably really, you guys know what it's like to be working in a veterinary hospital and paint you this amazing picture because we've both been in it for so long. And I'm certainly not here to defend veterinarians who do this, but I am also here to say that it is a very stressful
Well, it's a
job.
reality. Yeah.
It's
just
a
a reality.
very, very, very stressful job. On the part of the owner, I do these consultations now. I won't take in clients until I've sat them down and have this nice little conversation about ways that we can help their dog and their experience be better. And I think vets should do that. You know, when clients are, I don't want the diagnostics and I don't want you to run the x-rays, and we put all of that pressure on the veterinarian is when those things can, I know, Scott, that's what the guy said you did, but you didn't do that, right? He didn't offer the test.
No, he said, I know what's wrong with him.
Yeah.
Here's
But-
a shot of Convenia,
Yeah.
which was contraindicated because Joey had kidney dysfunction. And Zoetis said, do not give this to any animal that has kidney dysfunction. It's plainly stated in their safety data sheet, which he didn't know about. And he saved me $99 on the labs, but charged me $92 for the shot. And, you know, there a lot went wrong. And that was his third rodeo with the state of Florida in 6 years.
Yeah.
And the third offense is the same as the first offense when it comes to disciplinary action, as it would be with the fifth or sixth offense.
But
And
didn't
that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
he also say though that you didn't have the money and you wouldn't pay for it?
Yeah, right. I didn't have the money, you know, and he offered all this stuff. That was when he was altering the records once he found out he was in trouble with the state.
Right.
The
right.
records I picked up a week later after Joey died, no, they were perfect. They were perfectly accurate. But when my lawyer showed me the altered records, and you're a bad pet parent, he told us for a long time that Joey had a lipoma, small lipoma on his tail. He said, no, we don't remove those unless they interfere with the dog's lifestyle, like walking or something. Then they'll remove it. Otherwise, we don't bother. We know it's benign. We know nothing's ever going to come of it. In those altered records, he said, suggested to owner O, as standard in the profession, to remove lipoma. Owner refused due to financial. You know what? I would have cleaned out half my 401k for Joey if I had to. Okay.
Yeah.
So what, for a few $100s, I'm going to say I can't afford it. I mean, anything and everything to cover their negligence. We know it. It happens all the
Talked
time.
that on the show before, where veterinarians assume someone maybe can't afford it, so they shouldn't do that. You have to offer everything and let the owner decide what they want to do.
And that facility, Carrie, was famous for performing the services needed, and you pay what you can every month. So even if that was the case, and I had to pay 40, 50 a month or whatever,
Yeah.
There's no excuse.
That would have been offered to you
Of
if,
course.
in fact, everything else was offered to you.
Right.
Yeah, it's.
Well, it sounds like that was more of the cover up.
Yeah, it's the cover up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No question.
Yeah.
No question. I mean, what's the charge to remove a lipoma, even if he did? A couple $100?
And the
No big deal.
convenience shot was $100. So,
Yeah, convenient was $100.
Right.
oh my gosh. Yeah, it's.
Well, they sent me the invoice. It was like $804 for everything they did after Joey died. And I sent him back the invoice with a personal message on it. what they could do with the invoice. Literally what they could do with the invoice. And I never heard from them again.
Really, nothing.
No.
Sounds like guilt to me.
Yeah, well, all he had to do, if all he had to do was do labs, he would have seen the kidney values, which were done the next day when we brought him back
Yeah.
by Joey's regular vet, who wasn't there the day before, unfortunately. And that's what we're in the bun and the creatinine were sky high. And he said, I'll do what I can,
But also what he could have done is said, I am so sorry I didn't run these labs, right? He could have done that.
he didn't
He
say
could've-
anything.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything.
Instead of, I don't know.
Not a straight up guy. And when I did when I did a Yelp and a Google post about what happened, there's always one in the crowd. One guy comes on and says, well, he was 12 years old. The doctor was just trying to help him pass simply or easily or whatever it was. And, there's always one idiot in the crowd. And what are you going to do?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So Christina, we want to get the laws changed so that animals are considered companions, not just property. We know what are our steps? I know we're working on the documentary, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, to just try to educate people and get more information out. But what is the likelihood, do you think, that this will happen or could happen?
That's a really good question. Likelihood, that's going to depend on where you live and who your representatives are. But yeah, I mean, everything from, I really think all politics is local. I would start with your state representatives. That's going to be the most worthwhile campaigning that can be done. City level is probably not going to be really that relevant because it's just the city. But yeah, I mean, as far as getting animals changed to being more than property is definitely going to require campaigning, lobbying your local state representative.
Uh-oh, poor thing. She really does have a cold. We're just so thankful that you came on the show tonight to answer these questions for us. Oh God, poor thing.
Yeah, just to, so say that you go through this process, and I'm just trying to kind of be sort of
We need it, devil's advocate. She's always the devil's
really
advocate.
good at that. But if let's say that things are looking really like that, those laws will be changed, that animals will be considered, then what that's going to, the weight that's going to put on veterinarians and insurance companies, I would expect then higher premiums for veterinarians and higher prices for owners of pets. And so it's just that, I think that's what.
Well, we just had Scott, who was it that came up with that? I can't remember who. Was it Banfield, I think, that wrote the article that said, listen, I'm paraphrasing, listen up, everybody. You don't want your dogs to be considered companion animals because it's going to cost you more, because veterinarians are going to have to pay more in veterinary malpractice. Do you know which article I'm talking about, Scott? You posted it.
My group posted it, or was it me?
It was a while ago, but it was this huge article, and it was the other side. And remember, we talked and I said, oh, this means we're putting some pressure on somebody because they're coming up with a rebuttal. Yeah. They're starting to go, something's happening. But basically the article said, if we make dogs and cats be more important in the eyes of the law, it will be too expensive to take your pet to a veterinarian because they will have to raise all of their prices.
Okay, but Carrie, that's the same garbage we were listening to for years.
Yeah.
From the propaganda machine from the veterinary profession.
Yeah.
Your dog's only worth $100 in court. Don't bother suing your vet. It's not worth it. Okay. And we listened and we obeyed and nothing happened. Nobody challenged it. Now, Joey's legacy in 2017 started breaking down those walls. And now we find out that every one of the settlements that I'm aware of want to qualify that, because non-disclosure agreements, most people abide by them, and they don't come back to me and, they'll just say, thank you, we won our case. Okay, but none of our settlements are $100.
Right.
All of our settlements are well into the thousands. Okay, and it even goes beyond reimbursement and replacement values.
Yeah.
Now, because of what we were talking about before with civil charges and accusations, allegations of fraud and that kind of thing, misrepresentation, they can lead to larger damage awards, as Christina, I'm sure, would confirm. So
Right.
if your dog is worth more than $100, always was, nobody ever knew it because nobody challenged the veterinary propaganda machine. So
Yeah.
now we're here and we're moving forward.
Attorneys on here that have said, well, we just said this and it worked in our favor to kind of go, well, this is about fraud, or you start using other things in there
Right.
that make it
Right. Yes,
great.
exactly.
But even I mean, I think that even if it is going to raise our prices to take I still think it's the right thing to do. Like
It's right, absolutely.
like I feel bad for people that it's going to be harder and harder for them to get. And I also feel bad for the animals that may not get the care, but we can't allow
No,
this to keep going on. We can't allow vets to hide behind the fact that your dog is only worth as much as a toaster. That's not right.
no,
So
of course not.
it's difficult. It's one of those cases, I think, Christina, that you would say, it's like, well, what do we do? Nothing. We can't do nothing.
Well, I guess I don't really understand that argument, because to me, there's pet insurance. So if pets, like I get health insurance
Yeah.
to take myself to the doctor. If my pet was worth more than $100, then I would for sure invest in pet insurance.
Yeah.
And then that would offset whatever costs the extra costs that the veterinarians are going to charge. I think most people don't get pet insurance right now because pet insurance is actually kind of expensive. And if you don't get it when you first get your pet, which a lot of new pet owners don't think to do, then it's even more expensive to get it later. And then it covers less and less. So I think if people knew, like, hey, my dog is worth more in the eyes of the law than $100, and I can get pet insurance, and that will cover the the extra costs that vets are charging because animals are worth
They
more.
have to have more.
I think people would do it. I really don't think like that's, in my opinion, for once, the insurance companies would actually be like our best bedfellow in this argument, because they would make so much more money, because I think everybody would have pet insurance if their pet was worth more in the eyes of, I mean, I would go out and get I don't have pet insurance. I didn't know that pet insurance was a thing until both my pets are almost 10 years old, so I didn't know about pet insurance until
Pet insurance
really I
used to be
started
so
doing
bad,
this.
but it has gotten better.
It used to be.
Yeah.
I used to tell people, don't waste your money, because
Right.
unless your dog gets hit by a car, they cover nothing else.
And even that, they would, just like because they're a business, right? They need to make more money than they put out there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I used to, but it's gotten better. I've noticed little here and there. And it's interesting you say it's one of those cases where we want insurance, but I also have said that in some ways insurance can be really good in the veterinary world, because I know Dr. Haddad and I have talked about this before. If you have a dog you got a puppy, maybe he comes home for the first time from a breeder and he's got diarrhea. Sometimes you go to the vet, he's had diarrhea for one day, but everything's normal. And some vets will go, oh, we have to run X-rays, MRIs, we need a brain scan. We're going to have to wrap all 4 paws in this special, and it's $90,000 later. And you're like, oh my God, this puppy, and you do it. An insurance company would go, no. He's had it, like they do with people. Because if you brought a baby to an emergency room and it has diarrhea for less than 24 hours, they would say, well, take him home and give him some bananas, So in a weird way, insurance can also keep some of our veterinarians in check. Like, how much can you do? So I hope, fingers crossed, that pet insurance gets better over time and can cover some of the stuff for people and help us, so that, veterinarians should have better insurance to cover them in cases of veterinary malpractice where they do make the mistakes. Because veterinary practice, isn't always this horrible bad vet, right? Sometimes, like we talked about, sometimes it was just an accident and it shouldn't have happened, but it did happen. But that doesn't mean the pet owner shouldn't recover anything from that. But I don't know. So it's a really tough thing. So we got to get this documentary done. I don't know, Christina, have you been able to see did you get to see the little, what is it called, Scott? The
Sizzle reel.
the
8
sizzle
minute
reel,
link.
did you see that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
it made me cry. It was very
It made me
sweet.
cry too. I was like, you haven't seen
Mission
it.
accomplished.
I'm
so.
gonna show Dad tonight. It absolutely was mission accomplished.
Tug at your heartstrings, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very beautifully done. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just going to be amazing to see when we can get the entire thing going and raise the money in order to do that, so that we can get these laws changed and some things moving forward. And we talked about it last time. Scott, where are we with the documentary right now?
So we've got a little bit more funding beyond the sizzle reel. I know John's already done a few more interviews with a few more pet parents and I think one other attorney in Florida. But we got a long way to go, Carrie. I mean, if we want to turn out a product that the likes of Netflix and, History Channel and Animal Planet and some of these other media outlets are going to be interested in presenting to their viewers, which of course are in the millions, this has to be a bona fide effort, not an 8-minute sizzle reel.
Right.
We know we've got some contacts at PBS, so we're fairly confident we can get the full documentary, to PBS, and they can present it to their viewers. And they're in the millions by themselves, let alone anybody else. So the trick here is, if basically I want to do this because if vet boards refuse to listen to pet parents with grievances, and they even turn away ethical vets that go to them with stories of unethical vets, and what are you going to do about it? And they say, well, thank you for reporting it, and we'll be back in touch with you. And that's only to say 6 months later to say, well, we didn't find anything, nothing to see here. So they ignore the unethical vets. So it's no consolation, but pet parents are not the only group that vet boards ignore.
Right.
It's all about covering the negligence of their colleagues, trying to maintain the status quo. And the little bit of disciplinary action, like a year probation and $1,000 fine or $2,000 fine and a public reprimand, which most people don't even know where to go to look for it, to even know that it exists. That's their token effort to discipline firmly and fairly, which they never have, and they may never do that. So what we have to do is we just have to expose everything. Let as many people as we can know. And we always start our diatribe with the majority of vets do a great job. They're in the profession for the right reason. But we have this subset of vets that want to go their own way, the rogue vets that choose to cut corners. Some of them are totally incompetent. Most of them are competent, but things happen and commit an act of negligence or malpractice. But the real hard part of it, as you said initially in this podcast, is the ones that decide to cover their own negligence by lying and not being forthcoming. And that's what we want to expose. We need everybody, every pet parent in the United States and across and around the world to know that this stuff exists. Buyer beware, proceed with caution.
Yeah.
And that's the point of Jerry Robb's books and John's documentary.
Yeah, in order to get the documentary made, we need to raise more money. There's no way this documentary is going to get made, and the documentary is what will expose this.
Exactly.
Whole thing.
We have 2,800 members in our group, and we need you know, 500 to 700 of them to step up. And if they can make a donation of even $5 a month,
Right,
the
right.
documentary will get done very quickly. And some of our other projects to expose all of the dirt that exists would happen quickly as well. So we just need everybody that really has a passion for what we're doing and really wants to see genuine bona fide change in this profession, like we all do.
Yeah,
Please consider joining us. You know, and I've said this 1,000 times before, the veterinary profession was #3 most respected profession according to Gallup in 2006, behind nurses and pharmacists. They are no longer #3, and they haven't been for a long time. And
Yeah.
we know some of the reasons why. So let's all work together to get this, as one of our members called it, a glorious profession. And he's right.
Yeah.
Back up where it needs to be.
Yep.
It's that simple.
It does. And that's why we have vets that come on board here, because they aren't saying, you know, all vets are bad except me.
Right.
Hannah's not going, I'm the only good vet. They're all evil. They come on board because they know that it's important, that there are a few veterinarians out there that are bad.
Well, we know we're not all good, and we know we're not all bad.
Right.
And yeah, and I agree. It's like with cops, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it
It's
would
like
be
any
really nice if
profession.
those, yeah,
But
Any
if-
profession.
out the bad, it raises up
yes.
what you're talking about.
Yes.
It raises people up. So we need to raise this money. It's a lot of money to put together this documentary. We were able to, you and Jerry Robb mostly were able to gather enough money to do the sizzle reel so that people
Right.
could see we were serious. This isn't, you know, something done by a couple of elementary school kids.
Yeah, with a
So
camera.
it's amazing. And if you haven't seen it, I absolutely encourage you to watch it. I encourage you, you know, Scott always says, just donate $5. I mean, it's not, and it's amazing to me how many people will not do that. How many people have not, you know, given $5 to try to stop veterinary malpractice. And it's unfortunate.
And the reason it would work so easily in this group is because we have numbers.
Yeah.
And we don't even need half the people in the group to do it.
I know.
Maybe a quarter of the people to do it. And that would open all kinds of doors for us.
Well, I always shout out real quick. You don't have to even do anything except sign up for Smile, put Joey's Legacy as your donating thing, and shop for whatever you're buying, your uncle, cousin, niece, aunt, neighbor, horse, whatever it is you're buying for. And a little bit of money will automatically go into Joey's Legacy. And so all of that would add up if everybody just did that, just that alone.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know.
Can I say one
Yeah.
other thing before we close? I don't know if we're close.
We are
closing,
closing.
I just wanted to say, like, for people who maybe are listening to this and heard that story that I told, I just wanted to just clarify, because in their heads they might be thinking, well, gosh, with all that went wrong, how was it that owner
Was angry.
didn't end up wanting to sue? And I would just want to say that we didn't charge her for the surgery. We didn't charge her for any follow-up. I told her every single test we do on your dog for the rest of her life with regards to looking at this and monitoring this will be of no charge to you. And so right thing to
It
do.
was just the right
Yeah.
thing to do. And I know
And
a
that's
lot
what
of
we
the
need vets to
attorneys
do.
that we have spoken to have said, you know, I forget, one of the attorneys said that he would probably have no cases if veterinarians would just own up to their mistake,
Right.
apologize, and do the right thing from then on out. He would have no cases. He says a lot of times it just comes from people trying to cover stuff up.
Right.
And so, you know, if there's any veterinarians or vet techs that are listening, it's scary. It is very scary to own up to our mistakes. I'm the first one to tell you that. It is very scary when I have to say I made a mistake and I'm sorry and I'm going to make it right as best I can. but I'm going to encourage you to do it because it ends up almost always, it's not always, because I have had one case where I thought I'm just going to, and it didn't go the way I hoped it would. But in most cases, it'll go.
But in your
better
heart,
than
you
you
knew you
I
did the right
still
thing.
knew I did the
Yep.
right thing.
And that's
and
important
then
too.
that's it. I can sleep at night. I did the right
Yeah.
thing. I'm sorry she couldn't see it that way. But and I work in dog grooming. I'm not getting catheters stuck. So
Yeah.
when I make a mistake, I cut the eyelashes too short usually. And that can be traumatic for some
Devastating.
people. And I understand that's traumatic. And I can't make them grow back right now, but they will grow back. And so, so I just, from all of us, I think that's really what we need to do is, as a society too, like the pet owner needs to be more understanding too, if the veterinarian is coming to them and saying, I made this mistake and let's make it right. It's the best thing for the animals. So, but I'm going to end on the fact that we do need to raise the money. It's super important. Lori has put on here the Smile Amazon link. So we've made it even easier for you as a Christmas gift to Joey's legacy and in the name of all of the animals that have died from veterinary malpractice or in grooming shops or boarding facilities across this country, or your own animals who have been victim to veterinary malpractice. I encourage you to donate. And for your shopping season to please sign up for Smile Amazon. It will make a difference. Dr. Haddad, any last words?
Those were my last words.
Yeah. Those were the last words. Christina?
Nope, I think you covered it.
Scott, any last words?
Join us next Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Veterinary Tales. We'll have another member on to tell us her story of what happened with her companion animal. We have a special Joey Spotlight coming up. I wish I could say definitely right now. It's either going to be Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at 11 a.m. or Wednesday at 11 a.m. I'll post when I get the final date and time. We're going to have two attorneys from Hollywood, Florida that are in the business of debt defense. They handle cases of predatory lending practices. In this profession, there are allegations set forth against Care Credit and other lenders. And those unscrupulous vets that work with them. We know Care Credit is a wonderful thing when you're in crisis and you need it and you don't have the cash. But then things can go south real quickly if you don't adhere to their rules and regulations, as Christina probably knows. So I'll post that information as far as date and time, hopefully tomorrow morning when I get it. And I guess we'll see you guys back in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Right.
Before we go though, I do want to because it just breaks my heart that this is to Natalie, who just wrote something. She says, my experience as a pet owner goes back 30 years and my observation runs counter to the premise that bad actors are the exception. The rate of botch ups is way too high. Natalie, I am so sorry that has been your experience. It shouldn't be anyone's experience. It has not been mine, though I have seen it and Dr. Haddad has seen it. But I can see how pet owners, if you get in that situation where you're just, in an area or whatever is going on. But I just want to say I'm deeply sorry that has been your experience. And I hope that you find a veterinarian that you can trust.
That's important.
It's so important.
You need that team.
Yeah. And many of them, when you get the back-to-back situations, 30 years of having situations is really hard. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for you. And you are the reason why we are here. People like Natalie, we want to stop this so that these experiences don't continue. So that's why we have to fight even harder. So, all right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Make sure next week you listen to Veterinary Tales. If you don't think this can happen to you, it can, unfortunately. So you can listen to some of the stories that Scott does every other Sunday. So All right, everybody, have a wonderful evening. Christina, please feel better.
Thank
Feel
you.
better, Christina.
Thanks for having me on.
Sure, absolutely.
Go to bed.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
See, thanks, Dr. Haddad. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Poor thing.